If you try to move physical goods across the planet right now, you are going to hit a wall of congestion and friction. At the exact same time, India is aggressively marketing itself as the clear, reliable alternative to China's manufacturing dominance. This bar chart shows a contradiction. India's global exports are rising, but our trade deficit with China just crossed $100 billion. Overlaying a 40-year timeline shows why. Reversing consolidated supply chains requires building new factories at home, which require raw materials only China provides. When you look at the density of a global shipping port, you see a physical dependency that took half a century to build. It cannot be dismantled in a few business quarters. Full domestic supply chain independence is decades away. If you are running a business today, you do not have decades to wait. You need to identify specific, viable international markets where you can actually win right now. So, where do Indian SMEs and professionals deploy their capital? The Western markets are heavily saturated, and the Asian markets are tightly guarded. The answer lies in how India's foreign policy is currently negotiating new market access on the global stage. Trying to beat China at its own game, competing solely on the price of mass-manufactured goods, is a strategy with high historical failure rates. They have a 30-year head start on scale and state subsidies. The viable path is capacity exporting. This means exporting our proven domestic systems, our educational frameworks, and our digital public infrastructure. Securing global influence and reliable export revenue now comes down to finding specific regions that value institutional trust and local capacity building. This quadrant chart provides a framework for evaluating export options. We map purchasing power on the vertical axis against barrier to entry on the horizontal. In the top left quadrant, we find the mature markets of the West, the US and EU. These regions offer the highest consumer purchasing power in the world. Landing a contract here means high revenue per unit and immediate prestige for your brand. But the structural trade-offs are severe. Exporters face intense geopolitical friction, complex regulatory hurdles, and visa processing backlogs that delay operations by months. The West offers peak profitability, but success in this quadrant requires significant upfront capital and the endurance to weather a highly regulated environment. Moving the focus to the top right quadrant, we find Latin America. Right now, India and Latin America are quietly doing $45 billion in bilateral trade every single year. It is a significant market flying largely under the radar. These nations are actively looking to diversify their partnerships away from strict reliance on the US and China. That creates a distinct early mover advantage for new entrants. The reason it isn't crowded comes down to operational friction. You must navigate complex logistics routes and overcome language barriers without state-sponsored marketing support. For an agile Indian SME willing to absorb that initial logistical friction, Latin America provides unsaturated market access with high growth potential. Then we have the African continent, currently a strategic focal point for infrastructure, technology, and service expansion. For years, the dominant development model here was the Beijing Consensus. This relied on heavy debt trap financing, predatory lending, and importing foreign labor rather than hiring locally. This comparison matrix shows how the New Delhi Consensus takes a different approach, focusing heavily on localized capacity building. Indian initiatives export solutions, implementing water management frameworks like the Jal Jeevan Mission, and setting up educational institutions like IIT Zanzibar. That approach pays diplomatic dividends. By championing the African Union's permanent integration into forums like the G20, India has secured its role as a strategic advocate for the continent's integration. The main trade-off is time. Building local capacity yields slower immediate financial returns compared to aggressive, state-backed debt financing. But businesses that choose this route benefit from established geopolitical tailwinds. They secure long-term institutional partnerships that avoid the toxic blowback associated with debt trap diplomacy. Pushing an international export strategy eventually requires securing the manufacturing base back home. In the 1990s, India made a critical error by surrendering the base-level manufacturing of active pharmaceutical ingredients to cheaper foreign markets. Correcting that structural deficit through modern production-linked incentive schemes is going to take between 10 and 20 years. Achieving true supply chain sovereignty means businesses have to accept higher domestic input costs in the short term. That is the required price for long-term independence. We can synthesize all this regional data into a tactical decision-making tool. This 3-column scorecard, the Exporter's Capability Match, pairs your specific business profile with the right target market. If you are an aggressive scaler with heavy capitalization, your target is the West. You have the resources to absorb the high customer acquisition costs and visa friction. If you are an agile SME, you belong in Latin America. Your adaptability allows you to navigate the early mover logistics that scare off larger, slower competitors. If you are a capacity exporter dealing in infrastructure or digital public goods, Africa is your market. You can use current geopolitical tailwinds to build long-term contracts. Success in international trade requires matching your specific capital timeline and product type to the correct geopolitical environment. The Make in India initiative is not an overnight switch that will instantly replace the Chinese export engine. We are looking at a methodical, 20-year geopolitical and economic marathon. If you are operating a business, you need to maintain pragmatic sourcing strategies to survive today, while aggressively building trust-based export markets for tomorrow. The India Premium is built on reciprocal growth, where regional partners benefit alongside Indian firms. India's competitive edge relies on trust. We are the partner the Global South is actively choosing to build its future.